We are going to be starting with an update about YouTube podcasting because the feature is now live for content creators on the platform. In order to enable this feature, you just go to an existing playlist on your channel in YouTube Studio, you click on the options, and it says Mark as Podcast. When you click on this, now you have to add a show title, which is your podcast name. You add a description for your podcast. This will be a description of the show as a whole. And then you upload the square artwork, the 1x1, the 3x3, the square artwork. You know the ratio of what a square is. Once you've done that, you click the done button. And now in the eyes of YouTube, you have a podcast. You are now officially a YouTube podcaster. The big selling point of this, or I shouldn't say the big selling point, but the selling point, is that now you have playlist-specific analytics. In the past, your analytics would be channel-wide. So if you are uploading short-form videos, long-form videos, podcasts, live streams, all those analytics would be aggregated. But now that you have created a podcast playlist, you can go into your YouTube Studio, hover over that playlist, click Analytics, and now you are getting analytics for the playlist. And now you are getting analytics for your podcast, for the videos within that playlist. All other content on your channel will be ignored. For podcast channels like mine, this is nothing new. I just upload full versions of this podcast, full episodes of this podcast. So when I go to my channel-wide analytics, I get this exact information, or almost this exact information. Because in the past, I had tried uploading clips to this channel alongside full episodes. I moved that to a new channel. We'll discuss that later. So it is a little bit skewed. If I want to make sure I am only capturing the analytics for the podcast episodes, I can look at this. Something I just thought of that I need to look into. This playlist has analytics. It has videos from multiple channels. This Banjo Says podcast channel, and then I have episodes that were uploaded to the Podcastage channel, which are included on this playlist. Is this playlist going to report analytics for videos that are hosted on separate channels? Or will it only report analytics? I'm going to test that. I will report back to you next week. I will report back to you next week, and we will see what happens. Very interesting. I even made a note so I do not forget. You may be asking yourself, why is YouTube setting it up this way? Why are they making you create a playlist, mark it as a podcast, and that's how you get the analytics? That is how you get marked as a podcast. Why not allow podcasters to mark their entire channel as a podcast? If you are new to YouTube, YouTube has spent a lot of time and a lot of money generating new types of content, and they have pushed their creators to create these new forms of content. What do I mean? Shorts. That is the most recent one. They try to compete with TikTok. Maybe they're doing well, maybe they're not. They want you to create sub 1 minute videos and upload those to grow your channel. They even put little notices on the dashboard in your creator studio. Hey, we've noticed people who create shorts grow a lot more. You should consider doing it. Create shorts, creator. They also have live streams. They love live streams because it creates a lot of direct interaction with the YouTube channel owner and the audience. And that also means super chats. Super chats means YouTube gets money because they take 40% of super chats. I can't remember the breakdown of every different monetization strategy. They also want you to clip your podcast because, yes, a lot of us who consume podcasts see no issue watching an hour-long YouTube video. But a lot of YouTube viewers do not want to click on a 1-hour video. They may see a title that sounds very interesting. Google and podcasting are not compatible and think, ooh, that sounds so interesting, and then see how long the video is, 1 hour, and say, no thanks, skip right by it. So now on this channel that you created to upload your podcast, you do have your video podcasts, but you also have shorts, you also have live streams, you also have clips, you may also have membership posts, you may also have community posts. There are a bunch of different aspects to YouTube. So if you want to grow on the platform, they're probably expecting you to do all of these different types of content. And if you're a podcaster, you still want those podcast-specific analytics. So in my mind, that is why they have gone this route. But let's come back to reality. What is this entire announcement? What has actually happened? Why has it actually happened? All this is, you create a playlist, you mark it as a podcast. Where is that content available? Directly on YouTube, and in the future, on YouTube Music. That's it. It is not going to create an RSS feed. You will not be able to download YouTube videos or the audio from YouTube videos in whatever podcatcher you want. You are only going to be able to consume this exclusively on YouTube platforms or Google platforms, YouTube Music and YouTube proper. Let's revisit something that I have said in the past, because I know there are people who are deep in podcasting who are still screaming, that's not a podcast, that's a video, that's a show, don't call it a podcast. And as I've said in the past, yes, technically you are correct. However, to the average consumer, long-form spoken word content and podcast are terms that are synonymous. The average consumer thinks that long-form spoken word content is a podcast, whether it is distributed via an RSS feed or whether they are watching it on YouTube. Doesn't matter. To them, those are podcasts. So now that YouTube has rolled out this feature, you can mark your playlist as a podcast. People who are watching this content on YouTube may see a little note that says, podcast. This is a podcast. To the entire world, they will see YouTube podcasts. So what does that mean? That means that YouTube may have just become the largest podcast host in the entire world. I don't have the numbers, I don't have the statistics. But because they are able to redefine what a podcast is, or maybe they can't redefine it, maybe some people will say they have hijacked it. That's fair. They may have hijacked the term podcast, but now since podcasting and YouTube have become intertwined in the news, in the coverage, and on YouTube there will be this little marker saying this is a podcast. They are likely going to be able to go out and say, we have the most podcast listens. We have the most podcast shows hosted. We have the most podcast episodes hosted. We get the most podcast watch time. Are you a podcast advertiser? Well, what kind of analytics are you getting? Do you trust those? Do you know how much of your advertisement the listener is actually consuming? You don't? You just know that somebody downloaded the episode? Well, podcast advertiser, may I interest you in the type of analytics that we can offer? We know exactly how much time every single episode was watched. We know how much time every single advertisement in the show was consumed. We know if somebody had their eyes on the screen, if their mouse was scrolling around waiting for the skip ad. We know exactly what kind of person is watching the content. With your podcast advertising in the past, you just have to take the podcaster's word for it. Here, you get that information directly from us. We wouldn't lie to you. We have all the analytics. And I know that may sound jaded, that may seem very capitalistic, and it is. But YouTube and Google probably saw all the money being thrown around in podcasting over the last couple of years. They saw Joe Rogan get acquired for $100 million. They see all the money in podcast advertising. They see CPMs of $15, $20 for 1,000 views. What? On YouTube? $2. $2 for a CPM usually. They see that and probably think, I don't mind if I get into that industry. There's a lot of money. So with that perspective, what can we expect in the future? What are the takeaways here? Should we expect all of the podcast hosts to go out of business? Libsyn, Blueberry, Podbean, Spotify for Podcasters, Captivate. Are they all going under because YouTube is going to take their lunch? All the new podcasters are jumping to YouTube to host their podcasts? No. I do not think that will happen. The reason I'm saying that, all of those podcast hosts give you an RSS feed. They allow you to distribute your podcast in the traditional way, the way that a podcast technically requires. My expectation, my forecast, you can take this to the bank. Call me out if this is wrong. I do not think YouTube will ever allow you to generate an RSS feed from these playlists. I do not think that YouTube or Google will ever allow you to send that RSS feed to anybody with a podcatcher and allow that listener to download your audio files. The reason being, that's not how Google functions. Google functions based on data collection, based on analytics. Google relies on that information. How much of each video have you consumed? How much of each ad have you consumed? When you're looking for a new piece of content, what are you hovering over? What are you most likely to click on next? They don't want you to have a longer view duration or a longer listen session on some random app. They want you to be on their platform for longer because that allows them to distribute more advertisements to you. That is the bottom line. And if you have downloaded an MP3 from a random podcatcher, you are not sending that data back to YouTube. So that is why I don't think YouTube launching quote-unquote podcasts means the end for podcast hosting. I don't think this replaces podcast hosting. I do not think YouTube is going to be the dominant force in podcasting. I think they may say they are. I think they may say, hey, we have the most podcast. We have the most podcast views. We have the most podcast view duration. So advertise with us. But I don't think podcast hosts are in danger. I don't think you'll ever get an RSS feed from YouTube. Everybody is safe, and people can continue to scream, that's not a podcast, that's a YouTube video. And technically, they'll be correct. That is all that I have on the YouTube podcasting story this week. I know I've been discussing this a lot recently, but my two worlds kind of collided, and it's very exciting for me. I started in podcasting, I moved and became a YouTuber, and now the two have merged. How cool is that for me? You may be sick of hearing about it. I'll try to dampen down how much I talk about it, and I will cover it when new features roll out, when we know a lot more. But now I have put out my forecast, my expectations, my speculation, and you can all point and laugh if I was wrong. I bet I wasn't, though. I'll put a penny on that bet because there's a lot of viewers and listeners. I don't want to owe you all tens of thousands of dollars. I don't have that kind of budget. I don't have the Google money. I don't have the podcasting CPM money.